When an older woman of color walks into a restaurant to celebrate her 40th wedding anniversary, she hopes for a warm reception, even though her husband has passed away. This is a ritual she has maintained to honor their beautiful memories. However, contrary to her expectations, she receives nothing but cold stares and humiliation from a young server, who is unaware that she is the mother of the restaurant owner. He refuses to serve her without realizing that just a few minutes later, his career will plummet into oblivion. What happens next will astonish even those who have been through a lot in life. But first, let me tell you the story from the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe and like to join in the fight against discrimination and injustice in society. One evening, as the sunset painted the city sky red, Clara, an older woman of color with silver-streaked hair and a gentle smile, walked into the Golden Sun restaurant. Today marked her 40th wedding anniversary, and although she had made a reservation for a cozy dinner with friends, Clara dressed simply as usual. Her modest nature shied away from ostentation, so a light floral dress and flat shoes were the perfect choice for tonight. Clara looked forward to a celebration filled with love and joy alongside her close friends in the familiar ambience of Golden Sun, where memories of her husband still echoed in every corner. But the smile on Clara's face suddenly faded when she caught the cold gaze of Mateo, a young server with an inscrutable expression. "Hello, I have a reservation," she said softly, trying to dispel the tense atmosphere. Mateo raised an eyebrow, his eyes scanning her indifferently, then curtly replied, "No tables available." Clara was taken aback. She couldn't understand why Mateo had to lie like that. Was it just because of her simple clothes or her skin color that he dared to treat her this way? A feeling of hurt and anger welled up inside Clara. She decided that she would not let this matter pass quietly. Mateo's coldness only confused Clara further. She was a regular at Golden Sun, where she was always welcomed with bright smiles from the staff. She had never had to endure such an insulting attitude. Maybe he's going through some personal issues, Clara thought to herself, but the discomfort in her heart couldn't be extinguished. Clara furrowed her brow, trying to understand why her reservation had not been honored. "But I confirmed my reservation yesterday. Could there be some mistake?" The server sighed impatiently and curtly replied, "I told you there are no tables available. You should find another place to go." At this point, she realized that the young server was just a new employee who knew nothing about her and her role in the restaurant. His ignorance only made the situation worse. She was not just a regular customer, she was the mother of the restaurant owner. Clara felt a deep pain as she thought about the discrimination and prejudice she had to face, not just from Mateo but also from those around her. She decided that it was time to speak up, not just for herself but also for others who had experienced similar humiliation. Clara had lived a life full of challenges and hardships. Born and raised in a poor neighborhood in the South, she had witnessed the worst of racial discrimination. As a child, she was often chased out of stores just because of the color of her skin. She recalled the day when she was only 10 years old and was pushed out of an ice cream shop by an older woman, simply because she wanted to buy an ice cream for herself. The insults and disdainful looks she received were etched deep in her mind, making her feel unworthy of good things. Despite facing such injustices, Clara never allowed that discrimination to deter her. She dedicated her entire life to fighting for the rights of the oppressed, becoming a social activist in her community. She organized meetings, led movements for equality, and frequently spoke to young people about the importance of standing up against injustice. The painful experiences of her past had forged her strong and determined character. Clara could never forget those pains, but she transformed them into motivation to never succumb to discrimination and to prove that a woman like her could make a difference. Now, when facing Mateo and the humiliation she had to endure, Clara felt a fire ignite within her. She stepped forward and asked, "Are you sure there's no room for me? Perhaps I can wait at the counter." She tried to create a gentle smile, but inside her heart was filled with unease. The server crossed his arms and smirked sarcastically. "I've said it all. There are no free tables and no further discussion." His voice was cold, like a knife cutting through Clara's hopes. Clara felt each word like a punch to the face, but she knew she could not back down. "I made a reservation, and I have the right to be served. If not here, then where?" she replied, determined to fill the space with her voice. The gazes around her began to focus on Clara, admiring and astonished by the bravery of an elderly woman standing up against injustice. This moment was not just her fight, but also a fight for all those who had ever been treated this way. Clara knew that silence would change nothing. She had been silent for too long. The tension in the air rose as Clara and Matteo continued to spar with sharp words, like knives aimed directly at each other. Other customers in the restaurant began to pay attention to them, some secretly recording videos while others shook their heads in dismay at the situation. "Madam, I don't know who you think you are, but this is not a place for you to come and bully the staff," Matteo said angrily, his voice echoing in the quiet space. "You are not a special guest here." "Then let me tell you something, Matteo," Clara replied, her voice firm. "I'm not here to beg for your pity. I am a regular customer, and I deserve to be treated with respect. If you can't do that, then perhaps you should reconsider your career." Matteo glared at her, unable to believe that an older woman would dare to challenge him. "I don't need a lecture from someone like you. Do you have any idea how many other customers are waiting? I can't waste my time on people like you who think they're special." "And do you know," Clara shot back, "that's why I'm not waiting for your service. You're not only insulting me, but you're also insulting yourself. Don't think you can stand here and decide who is worthy and who isn't." Matteo, the young server, looked up, his gaze still defiant. "I don't care who you are. All I see is a woman who doesn't know her place. You might think you're a special customer, but here, everyone is the same." Clara stood her ground, trying to process what was happening inside her. The feeling of injustice was growing, and she sensed the suppressed anger starting to overwhelm her usual restraint. Her heart raced, memories of the humiliations and injustices she had faced throughout her life resurfacing, mingling with the bitter taste of this moment. Noticing her hesitation, Matteo smirked even more. "Do you think you have the right to come here just because you're a regular? You don't belong in places like this anymore." He glanced quickly at her old bag and worn-out shoes before adding, "Go back to where you belong." Anger surged within her. But before she could respond, the image of Isaac appeared in her mind. She pictured her son standing there, filled with indignation and determination. Having been underestimated because of his skin color, they had faced challenges together, standing up against discrimination. She felt that she was not only representing herself but also all those who had endured similar experiences. Though she felt weary, Clara straightened her back, her gaze sharper than ever. Inside, her determination flared anew. "You may think I don't belong here, but I stand here not just for myself. I stand here for my son, for those who have suffered discrimination and been trampled on," she shouted, her voice powerful and capturing the attention of everyone present. "You don't have the right to speak," Matteo shot back, but now his tone was no longer as confident as before. The gazes around began shifting from indifference to empathy. "What right? The right of a racist or someone who looks down on others just because of appearances? You don't have that right. We have fought for what we deserve, and we will not let people like you take that away from us." Tension in the air rose, and Matteo realized that everyone was siding with Clara. Sympathetic glances and outrage were visible all around the restaurant. "He doesn't deserve any respect," one customer said, and applause erupted throughout the room. Seeing some guests rallying behind Clara only fueled Matteo's anger further, and the tension in the atmosphere seemed to explode. In a moment of blind rage, he decided to resort to underhanded tactics for revenge. As he served food to the customers, Matteo deliberately walked past Clara, stealing glances at her reaction. Suddenly, he gave the elderly woman a painful shove and pretended to trip, and in an unconscious act, all the food on his tray came crashing down onto her. Food flew everywhere, the strong smell of sauce mingling with the startled gasps of the surrounding patrons. Clara was stunned, feeling as if the entire world was collapsing around her. A mix of hurt and anger surged within her as she looked at her soiled outfit, but what pained her even more was the provocation and contempt Matteo had shown her. Her gaze transcended mere anger. It was a resolute stand against discrimination. She stood tall, trying to maintain her composure amidst the turmoil that was erupting around her. "Is that how you serve your customers?" Clara said firmly, though her voice trembled slightly with anger. The people around her began to murmur, unable to believe Matteo's brutality. They exchanged glances, sensing that this had gone too far. As the confrontation between Clara and Matteo reached a peak of tension, suddenly a sharp pain gripped her chest, making it hard for her to breathe. Her sharp gaze suddenly became blurry, and before she could understand what was happening, she collapsed right there. Her body crumpled to the restaurant floor, leaving those around her in a panic. Screams and the noise of chairs being pushed back filled the air, and the atmosphere in the restaurant turned chaotic. Nearby customers rushed to help Clara while Mateo stood frozen, stunned by the unexpected turn of events. They quickly called for an ambulance, and as one customer used their phone to capture the moment, the video was posted on social media and quickly went viral. Within minutes, images of Clara lying motionless on the floor, accompanied by the frantic cries of those around her, became an online phenomenon. Comments and shares flooded in, ranging from those who empathized with her plight to those who criticized Mateo's attitude. Clara was no longer just a woman facing discrimination. She had now become a symbol of the fight against injustice and racism in modern society. While everyone rushed around Clara, the restaurant manager, a middle-aged man named Ethan, had just returned from a meeting with partners. When he stepped in and saw the chaotic scene, his heart felt like it stopped. His gaze fixed on the sight of Clara lying motionless on the floor, surrounded by worried guests calling for an ambulance. "What happened to the mother of our restaurant owner? Call an ambulance now," Ethan shouted, his voice filled with concern. He rushed to Clara's side, knelt down, and checked her condition. The screams and ringing phones around them only heightened the atmosphere of panic. Inside Ethan, a sense of guilt and responsibility surged. He knew that Clara was an integral part of this place, not only as the mother of the restaurant owner but also as a symbol of the friendliness and warmth the Golden Sun always provided. When the ambulance finally arrived, Ethan stood up, directing the medical team, and watched as they carefully placed Clara on a stretcher. A wave of anxiety surged within him. He realized that not only was Clara's health at risk, but the restaurant's reputation would also suffer if this situation wasn't handled swiftly. Now all eyes were on him, and he knew he had to act quickly to salvage the situation. Ethan couldn't believe how bad the situation had gotten. He immediately pulled out his phone and called Isaac, Clara's son, his voice filled with panic. "Isaac, something bad has happened to your mother. Clara has collapsed at the restaurant and is being taken to the hospital right now. You need to get there quickly." Upon hearing the news, Isaac felt the blood drain from his face. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and anxiety enveloped his mind. Without hesitation, he jumped into his car and sped toward the hospital. A wave of indescribable fear surged within him as he wondered how his mother was doing. As the car raced down the road, images of his mother, a strong woman who had fought countless battles, flashed in his mind. Isaac told himself that he had to be there for her, not only to care for her, but also to protect and stand up for everything she represented. More than ever, he felt the need to ensure that his mother would not have to face any more injustice. Meanwhile, Mateo, the young server, stood frozen in shock as he realized that the woman lying motionless on the floor was the mother of the restaurant's owner. This truth hit him like a bolt of lightning, leaving him stunned. He had not only insulted a customer but had also put himself in an irreparable situation. Ethan, still filled with worry, glared at Mateo with anger. "What have you done? What happened to Clara? Are you even aware of your responsibilities?" Ethan yelled, each word stabbing into Mateo's already fractured confidence. He felt like he was drowning in a tide of humiliation and anxiety. "Get in the car and take me to the hospital," Ethan shouted, not giving Mateo any time to respond or defend his actions. "You need to face what you've caused." On the way to the hospital, Mateo felt as if his mouth had been sealed shut, unable to utter a word. All the sounds around him seemed to fade away, leaving only chaotic thoughts racing through his mind. He had been unemployed for a long time and had only been working at this restaurant for 2 weeks. Now, everything seemed to be collapsing before his eyes. He wondered, would he be fired? Would the owner of the restaurant forgive him, or would he only see the carelessness he had caused? Anxiety spread through his mind like a storm. Images of Clara lying motionless on the restaurant floor sent chills down his spine. What if something happens to her? That thought stabbed at his heart. He was not only worried about losing his job, but also about his future. If Clara didn't make it, would he have to face legal consequences? A wave of guilt surged within him, a heavy feeling that Mateo had never experienced before. He had intentionally caused an incident that could now lead to serious repercussions. "I'm not a bad person," he told himself. Clara was quickly attended to by the emergency doctors, the medical staff operating like machines, ready to handle the crisis. Isaac stood outside the emergency room, his hands clenched in prayer, as if that could keep his mother safe. The flashing lights and the loud sounds of machines only heightened his anxiety. Matteo and Ethan had just arrived at the hospital when they encountered Isaac in the hallway. Isaac's eyes blazed with anger, and he pointed directly at Matteo without hesitation. "What have you done, Matteo? You made my mother faint and brought her to the hospital. Do you understand how I feel right now?" Isaac's voice thundered, leaving Matteo unable to justify himself. "Do you think your irresponsible actions are just a joke? This isn't just an argument, it's a deep insult." Matteo lowered his head, realizing that Isaac's reprimand was not only fueled by anger, but also by the pain of a son witnessing his mother in distress. Matteo looked down, unable to meet Isaac's gaze. "I know I was wrong, and I am truly sorry," he said sincerely. "I didn't know who she was." Isaac shook his head, cutting him off. "It doesn't matter. That's not an excuse. Everyone deserves respect, not just for who they are, but for their dignity as well. I hope you learn from this mistake and ensure it never happens again." After what felt like an eternity, the doctor stepped out, his face revealing little emotion. But his eyes offered Isaac a glimmer of hope. "Mrs. Clara has passed the critical stage. We have stabilized her condition, but she needs to be monitored further. She will wake up in a few minutes." Isaac felt as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. His mother was still alive, which meant he had a chance to tell her things he had never had the opportunity to express. He promised himself that when she woke up he would be by her side and would not let her suffer any more harm. Meanwhile, Matteo stood to the side, his heart pounding, unsure of what to do other than feel remorse. He approached Clara's hospital bed, his heart racing as he saw her lying there pale. It felt like a heavy stone was pressing down on his chest, and the waves of regret surged within him. After Isaac stepped outside to call the doctor, Matteo knew this was his only chance to say what he had buried deep inside. He leaned closer to Clara, his voice trembling. "Mrs. Clara, I am truly sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I regret what happened. You didn't deserve that." Clara remained still, but in the moment of silence, Matteo sensed a deep-seated forgiveness emanating from her. When Isaac returned, Matteo turned to him, his gaze sincere. "Isaac, I apologize for everything. I was wrong." Isaac looked at Matteo, his eyes no longer filled with anger but with empathy. "We all make mistakes, Matteo. What matters is that you learn from them." "I watched the video," he said, his voice calm but cold. "This cannot happen in our restaurant. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go." Matteo looked into Isaac's eyes, panic and fear evident. "Isaac, I've realized my mistakes. I'm not a bad person," he pleaded, but Isaac merely shook his head. "That's not the issue. This is a necessary decision to protect the reputation of the family and the restaurant. I hope you understand." A sense of abandonment washed over Matteo, but he also knew this was the consequence of his actions. No matter how much he regretted it, things had gone too far, and he had to face this painful reality. After leaving the hospital, Matteo sat down and recorded a public video. "Hello, I'm Matteo," he said sincerely. "Today, I want to apologize to Mrs. Clara and the community of people of color. I was wrong, and I realized that my actions not only caused harm, but also reflected the discrimination we must fight against." He continued, his eyes filled with determination. "I promise to become a better citizen, to learn and act against racism. I cannot change the past, but I can do better in the future." As the video ended, he hit the upload button, feeling a sense of relief within himself. This was the beginning of a new journey for Matteo, a person determined to stand up for justice and equality for all.